22nd of March, 2023. That was the day I created a document titled Yu-Gi-Oh! Support That Should Happen. In it, I put all my hopes and dreams and ideas for Yu-Gi-Oh! Support that should happen. I said to myself I would check this document in a year from now and see what actually happened. Join me now as I go through this document to see if anything from my Yu-Gi-Oh! Wishlist came true. Alright, so first up is a very good example of what I mean by things in this document can kind of be quite random and specific. Some are like, oh, this archetype should get support. Some things are like, no, I need this one very specific thing in my life right now, and give it to me. And this is probably that number one thing, and that is Chamber Dragon Maid's Dragon Form. Where the hell is it, Konami? Please give me it. So, let's see. Dragon Maids, they were released in Mystic Fighters about 2019, I believe, near the end. Actually, near the end of TOS format, which is coincidentally when I got back into the game big time. Yeah, they're just a fusion dragon archetype based on Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maids, one of my favorite animes. Even kind of got the blessing from the creator itself, which is pretty cool. And it's just so strange to me that we just haven't got any any modern design cards for Dragon Maid since I've been back into the game. Like, the last thing they really got was Dragon Maid Tidying the Trap card, which is the return to hand trap card, which is a decent trap card for interruption. And I guess technically Shio, and then every so often they give us random, like, non-archetype specific cards, like Laundry Trap, that just kind of, it's like, oh look, Laundry Dragon Maid doing a funny, and it's like, that's great, I love that. However, I would also love to be able to play the deck in, like, at least a playable, like, maybe not super duper meta, but at least keep up with the kind of the modern pace of the game, as it were. Because they really have fallen behind. I don't think Hieratic Seal's pass is particularly great as it stands turn 1. But yeah, I will now read you a quote from the guy who designed the Dragon Maids, like their art. Here is what it says. I designed her as being bad at expressing herself, and her appearance looked like she's hiding in a shell. Because she's shy, I wanted to make her horns bigger as to hide her face, but I held back, and now she looks like this. Her occupation lets her make full use of her feathers that are great for cleaning, and she's certainly happy about moving on from being a hikikomori because of that. Not just personally, but also as its illustrator. I keep waiting for the day when I can create her dragon body. Even the damn illustrator wants to do it. Just let it happen. Let it happen, Konami. Please, I beg of you. Next up is what I would call 2, 3, and 4 on my list, respectively. But I'm going to condense them all into one point, as they are all for the same archetype, that being Labyrinth. Now, there is 4 cards I wanted to exist for Labyrinth. Those being the Scissor Girl and the Butler from the art of Big Welcome Labyrinth. The Labyrinth Knight, who is, of course, heavily featured as the one who's working their way through the labyrinth, and the Labyrinth Lantern Monster. You can see this in Labyrinth Setup and Fair Welcome Labyrinth. I've got ideas for the cards, but firstly, good news. This is the first thing that happened on the list. Labyrinth Butler actually exists and is a very good card. I personally only own one because it was quite an expensive card to get, as Labyrinth is pretty decent, pretty up there archetype. It's never like the top archetype. It's not exactly Snake Eyes Fire King, or just pure Snake Eyes for a matter of fact, but it is it's the best trap deck. I think I'm fair to say ever, because it's just such that generic traps. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I love the artwork. I love the lore. I won't get too into that. I could do a video on the lore if people wanted that, to be fair. But yeah, I'm hoping that the Labyrinth Scissor Girl, the Kill Scissor Girl over there, doesn't become like a Chamber Dragon Maid situation, where we just get it teased and it never happens. That's one of my hopes. The Labyrinth Knight, I think, could be really interesting. As like perhaps in the end of the story, the Labyrinth Knight is like, oh no, actually I do love you, lady, and then he becomes a Labyrinth monster himself, perhaps. But I think he should have the highest attack stat out of every Labyrinth monster, and I think he should have trap immunity like Jinzo, because that would make sense why they get through the labyrinth every time. If he's got trap immunity, it would just make like sense story-wise. And highest attack, because in the story he does defeat the Ariana and Ariane in battle, so that implies like he has a higher attack stat than them, and you'd assume if he beats Lady, he'd have at least 3,100 attack, or some way to beat them as another effect. Either way. But yeah, that's those two. The Labyrinth Lantern Monster. Now, I feel like we could have more furniture, and it is a character. If you look into the little stories, he does have minor speaking roles, so they do see him as a individual character in the Labyrinth lore. He just hasn't, the little lantern dudes haven't been made yet. So, please do that, Konami. That would be pretty epic. We just give it a similar effect to the other furniture, and we continue pretending we're IKEA. Wonderful, thank you. Alright, so next up, number 5 is Dino Wrestler support. That's what I wrote down here. That is a archetype I don't think anybody's ever... When was like the last time you saw Dino Wrestlers actually being played? I played against a friend once who had Dino Wrestlers, and it didn't work. They'd got a lot of like flip monsters and just like weird effects that require the battle phase, which makes sense. They are wrestlers, right? Thematically is correct, but from like a gameplay standpoint, they just need a bunch of new cards to make them function. They got a lot of like cool art, cool theme. I would love to play them if they were any good, but the only card's ever been good is Pankratops, and that's because he's generically good as like oh look, summon and pop one, which is pretty sad that I imagine most people don't know Dino Wrestler's an entire archetype they could play. They probably just thought Pankratops was like, oh look at that funny dude. But yeah, it just needs some more cards, and it didn't get any, which is very sad. Depressing. Arm Dragon support. Now this one's just kind of sad, isn't it? Because Arm Dragon's a classic level monster from way back in the day. I feel like if you owned those cards back in the day, it was like cool that you could level them all up all the way to 7, and then eventually they released 10 a little later on. But wasn't Blazing Vortex just awful? It's like a notoriously awful pack all the way back from 2021, like just the COVID era. I think something about that really screwed with the pack, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Releases were not great in that year. I feel like the Arm Dragon Thunder stuff, it just missed the mark. It's it's like it improved the level mechanic for sure. It made it so just opening a lot of those high level monsters wasn't as bad because you could just like get rid of them, I believe. But it just didn't like nobody played it. It's like it released and it quietly just like laid down and died, I guess. I felt like they were going somewhere with it though. I do like the idea of with level mechanics, you just like make it so opening those higher level monsters isn't a brick and a death sentence to playing it, and the fact you don't necessarily need the level up spell. You can like turbo through it, you know. There's no need to punish these sort of decks, making them slow when you look at like what Snake Eyes can do in a turn, you know, or any insane like combo deck. But yeah, it's sad they didn't get any more support. Pearly, this is at the time they'd only got their initial wave of support, so I was like, yeah, they just need those couple more cards to make them like a good deck, because I could see the potential in Pearly at the time. Honestly, not a massive logic leap that they just get a couple more cards, you know, another boss monster, another spell card, some sort of memory card, to just make them that like kind of top contender for the meta. And you know what, for a couple of formats they were, until they took away their memories. The poor thing. I was pleasantly surprised when Konami remembered that Ogdoadics existed. I honestly thought they would just make them and forget about them after Ancient Guardians, but no, they did release some support for the Ogdoadics. I'm honestly a bit of the reptile deck enthusiast. I really do like to run what I call reptile good stuff, because let's be honest, there has been no reptile archetype that is just good enough on its own just yet, which is silly because the game's been out for 25 years. But hey, here we are. Ogdoadic's probably only the first reptile archetype that really does something and has some end board. But hey, I'll get to my point 9 in a second. You'll see why I've got complaints there. But in terms of just talking pure Ogdoadic stuff, the cards are good. They let you turbo harder into nothing is how I would describe it. Your end board is still kind of non-existent. There's no boss monster really that survives. You got excellent forms of interrupt from Ogdabus himself. You know, just go to the graveyard. I just like send. I always enjoy telling new people about that effect where it's like, oh, is it a target? No, just go to the graveyard. If you weren't from there, leave. Become one with the graveyard. It's nice that Ogdoadic Daybreak gives me an excuse to break out the tokens. I like that. But other than that, we're still a ways away from actually having the Mega Turbo of the Ogdoadics engine actually create anything. Like any semblance of a real scary end board. My next point on the list for number 9 was Reptile Generic Boss Monster. Now, kinda came true. I feel like Konami read that and went, you should have been more specific, buddy, because what we did get was X-Tox Hydra. Now, I do enjoy using X-Tox Hydra, actually. It is playable within the generic reptile strategy. You just need Proxy F Magician to fuse it on out, and then you can kind of just go, lol, I made this. But once again, there is not a reptile boss monster with a protection effect. If we could just get towers for reptiles, that would be great. That's all I want, is like a towers-esque reptile monster, something with a protection effect. Doesn't have to be completely immune to every card effect, just at least protection from some sort of destruction effect. That would go so far, I think, if you could end on a monster like that. I think people would be scared of the end board instead of just going, well, I've got Regeki in hand, because I sure love DM era. But yeah, please, give me protection and boss monster. Next up on the list is honestly just kind of a pipe dream for my favourite machine archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! That being the A to Z archetype. Last saw any support for the entire archetype, because I'm not just talking about ABC, because I think a lot of people, if you're newer, you don't really know that there's other letters of the alphabet. V, W, X, Y, and Z. X, Y, Z being the originals. VW later being added on during GX. And then you got ABC when they went, maybe we should have a stab at that archetype. And yeah, ABC's great still, but all those other letters of the alphabet have been rotting away, I guess rusting away, because they're machines. Yeah, I mean, it is a nostalgia archetype in a way, and the last form of support they had was XYZ Combine, and before that XYZ Hypercannon, which is nice because it actually lets you make those old XYZ Dragon Cannon cards somewhat usable if you can get them out, but take it for somebody who's actually built the deck and tries to unironically play A to Z and not just ABC with, like, I don't know, King Regulus and a bunch of other generic bloody machine. I've got bloody reptiles in brain for the last 2 points. Machine support. It's not great. You have to open like the perfect hand, and one of those cards being unexpected dies. So you know it's not great. Honestly, Konami, just if you're not gonna retrain the old cards, then let us turbo them out because they aren't good. Also, make it so when I go into the A to Z big boy, I need cards in hand to activate his effect, and I find that if I have to have the perfect 5 card opening to even make him turn 1, and I've got no cards in hand, well, I've just made a 4K guy with no possible way to activate his effect. So, yeah, it's not great, and I know there's always that thing of like, well, technically the Ojamas are a part of this archetype, and so is is Dark Arm Dragon. It's like, well, I wanted to play pure A to Z machine, not Chaz. Yes, I don't want to Chaz it up. I just want to play my little Power Rangers machine archetype. Leave me alone. Also, I miss Union Carrier every day. Please release him, Konami. Point number 11 is perfectly ultimate Great Moth archetype. Isn't it weird that Weevil doesn't have a playable strategy in 2024? You know, like, as much as he is just like a character designed to be hated, fair enough. He's a classic character, and I love the idea of, like, oh, you make a cocoon and it turns into this big moth that should wreck your opponent. That's a cool idea for strategy, and we don't have many impressive insect archetypes. Like, the only two I can think of are Traptrix and, like, Insector, and even then they are not, like, exactly the scariest archetypes out there. So any more insect cards, you know, anything that just isn't a dark dragon or fiend, really, you know. I guess that's the one thing I can say is good about the current meta is, hey, when was the last time you saw Pyro and the fire attribute be relevant since, like, I don't know, Salamangreat? So yeah, he's got that going for it, but yeah, this is just a real big opportunity here. You could have Insect Queen, the ultimate moth, its cocoon, probably steal that speed duel card, make it into a spell card so you can turbo out the old one. I think that's what that one did. Yeah, not gonna drag this point on anymore. Just make Weevil playable. Point number 12. Crab Turtle archetype. If Hungry Burger can get an archetype, why not Crab Turtle? Point number 13 is Cyber Dragon support. Cyber Dragon, I feel like, is actually one of the more, I guess, decks that is surviving currently on like a kind of roguish casual level. Like, I can one-shot you, have a good time with my friends. That's pretty cool, but don't you think we need at least a couple of modern cards chucked Cyber Dragon's way? Just to, bring it up to speed a bit. Going second OTK strategies are like, never exactly, top of the class, are they? Seeger and Infinity. They're good cards, I think. Especially Infinity. But does anybody else find it weird that Konami decide to start counting from 2 in German? Where is Eins and Null? Like, that's just easy support. In a way, are they... I don't know if they're just saying that, like, Cyber Dragon Core is technically 0, and then thus your Cyber Dragon is 1? Okay, I mean, I guess that works, but it doesn't read that way. Like, you could just do it, But why not, if that is the case, right? You can just make more numbers, or just make another cool extra deck monster. Like, who's gonna complain? It's Cyber Dragon cards. Cyber Dragon cards have always been cool. Just let it happen. Just give us some more Cyber Dragon. I will now pitch to you a very silly idea I had. Do you remember Uraby? Wouldn't it be neat if Uraby got a retrain of some sort? Alright? Put this idea out there. It's pretty cool. It's just a little cool T-Rex guy. But what if Transcendosaurus Uraby exists? Huh? Think about it? Think about it? Okay, I know it. Right, next point. Alright, next on my list was Harpy support. So, I thought that Harpies are in quite the dire need of getting some cards just to make their deck more consistent than it already is. Give them a good end board as well. I feel like they could get that due to simply that DM era nostalgia, them being a My Valentine archetype. They've, in the past, because I've played Harpies, the best you could really do was do some really degenerate Simorg and the Barrier Statue of the Wind stuff before that got banned. And that was really it. Fearsome Fire Blast and Cyber Slash Harpy, those are good cards. But to kind of have it all line up and then to kind of exist past the turn when you set those up, it's not great. If we're just talking pure Harpies, I bet you could be like, oh, just play insert this card, and it's like, well, I'm talking just about the Harpies as a package, and they need more cards. Those cards are good though. Cyber Slash Harpy is a good monster. They just did more around it. Well, this next point, number, let's see, 16 on my list was a pleasant surprise. Not only because it was a kind of forgotten archetype, but also introduced a brand new type of monster in the illusions, that being Phantom Beasts. This was just really cool to see that they just gave all these cool fusion monsters that worked off these new illusion monsters, and also let you summon out the old monsters. I love it when they do that. It's like, yeah, why not? I'm never going to be powerful, just let me do it. The only thing I can say is they've kind of forgotten about the old Phantom Beasts. I mean, I don't think anybody's using them anyway, and it's probably a better direction for the archetype, but yeah, those I guess are being left to rot now, but we got this cool fusion archetype, so, win some, you lose some. Coming in at number 17 is Materiac to support. This is a 3-card archetype that was immediately just forgotten by Konami. It has stayed forgotten. There has been no support released. Number 18 is the same, Prime Mineral support. 2-card archetype that just stayed forgotten for even longer. I do feel like there's opportunity there, because who wouldn't want to play like a whole rock-based deck around just like primates and all that? I think there's potential there, but I don't see it happening. But it was on the, it's a wish list. It could happen. next one up, in number 19, is Gladiator Beasts. Now, when was the last time you saw Gladiator Beasts? Like, anybody play them? I feel like they kind of suffer from the same problem as, like, Warrock, but obviously not as bad. Any sort of archetype that's just like, oh, we work off the battle phase. Same as, like, Dino Wrestler. Any sort of, like, we need the battle phase kind of archetypes. They seem to struggle. They got some good support back in 2019 in Chaos Impact. They got, like, a whole line of support, they're that big fusion monster and all that stuff. So they're actually, I imagine, pretty decent at, like, a casual level at the very least. But you don't see them properly. Like, unless you're a proper, like, Glad Beast fan, you're not playing them, are you? Coming in at number 20 is Ancient Gear support. Now, this one's, I was really happy when this one got announced, because back in the day when I was like a kid, I played Ancient Gear cards. So it's nice to see just Ancient Gear getting some love. I feel like they've got bits and bobs over the years. I think the last card they got was in Dual Overload, that Link. They got all the good cards like that, the Howitzer and the Big Fusion. But I don't think they've had it. The deck doesn't seem to be consistent enough to kind of just do it all in turn one, and it just kind of turns into a burn strategy. I think, depending on how good these cards end up being, it could really make Ancient Gear just, like, very powerful. But I think only time will tell, depending on the quality of the cards. One thing I do like, as a little nod to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, is the fact that one of the Ancient Gears looks like Crowler. That's very cool. Very neat, Konami. Up next on the list is one that's been talked about to death, I think. But it is something that everybody agrees upon, and that would be Egyptian God support. I haven't seen any sort of meaningful support since Rage of Ra, and even then, it was a start, and Ra was the one that got most of the support. Obelisk and Slifer, they've got a couple of cards here and there, like, and even then, it's not enough to make the deck consistent, which is the main problem with the Egyptian God decks. Is you can't just get them and play them. You've got all these cards that they've given as support, and all of them usually have the restriction of you must have insert Egyptian God on the field, when the hardest part about playing is getting the Egyptian God on the field. Yes, it's gotten much easier with the your Reactor Slimes, your Guardian Slimes. Plenty of ways to kind of set it up, but there's nothing that really says search insert Egyptian God from deck to hand, which is really what the deck just needs to be playable. And even then, I think the Egyptian gods themselves are not powerful enough. I think if the Egyptian gods got retrains of some sort, maybe just labeled them like True Forms or Unleashed or something, give them a cool word, and just give them bonkers effects like the anime, because that's what the all the support cards are trying to simulate here. Is like, oh yeah, Ra was absolutely busted in the anime, had all these effects, which is why he's got all these cards around him. But in actual Yu-Gi-Oh, he's like the worst one. There's a potential to do some really cool stuff here. Like, it's always been weird to me that we've got Ra Sphere mode, but why can't we have Slifer Sphere mode? Why can't we have Obelisk Sphere mode? It actually is quite depressing on the topic of Sphere mode that Ra Sphere mode is the most used Egyptian God card, because it sees a lot of generic play. Being able to tribute 3 of your opponent's board and just kind of laugh. It's like, haha, nobody uses the effect to summon Ra. Oh well, I guess. And yeah, like, think about if you retrained like Slifer. We know he's the one that causes Regeki. Wouldn't it be cool if you could just search Regeki out if you summon Slifer, for example? So it could be some really cool stuff like that, but as it stands right now, the Egyptian gods, they they needed a lot of love, a lot of support, probably need a redo. They can do it. You look at the Exodia stuff, it's quite clear they can make something cool. They just, need to do it. And, of course, when you're thinking about the Egyptian gods, your minds immediately go to kind of two other archetypes. One being sacred beasts, but they're actually in a better spot than the actual Egyptian gods themselves, which I think is quite funny for being like evil Egyptian gods. The other one being the Wicked. I would love it if they made it so you could play the Wicked as like a proper little archetype. They give that one spell card, but it just sucks, doesn't it? To be honest. But just imagine some of the cool cards. Like, just imagine like the little dudes. Like, you've got like Dark Beckoning Beast, Phantasmal Summoning Beast, and all that. Imagine like those sort of cards, the little dudes. But for the Wicked, they would look really cool, just art-wise. I don't know what effect-wise they'd do, but man, I bet that would be cool. Sadly, it's not a thing. Please make it a thing, Konami. Good news, folks. We're on to one that actually happened, that being Earthbound Immortal support. Yeah, that was released recently. It looks like they've got a lot of strong like fusion and synchro monsters. It's very nice to see that they actually remembered the Earthbound Immortal. I don't play Earthbound Immortal, but I knew they needed help, because when was the last time you saw somebody play Earthbound Immortal to any success? Yeah, very nice, very cool, Konami. Thank you for remembering they existed. Hello, I'm back with another nostalgia thing that you're surprised isn't an archetype yet, that being Pyramid of Light. Really only 4 cards, in reality, as being all of the Sphinxes and the Pyramid of Light trap card itself, but isn't it weird for something so popular, that movie back in the day, big deal, that they've never retrained any of the strategy as it stands right now? I don't know if you could actually win with the Pyramid of Light strategy ever. It sucks. It's outdated cards, but there's potential to retrain all that stuff, make it into a cool archetype. Probably one that doesn't. It's probably one of those like archetypes that doesn't use the extra deck at all. Just like purely like a main deck-esque archetype. I could see that. It'd be pretty cool, but it wasn't done, so I'm sad. Here's an absolute mess of an archetype. Iron Chain. This archetype has been like essentially dead on arrival. And Arrival was literal years ago. It's a synchro archetype, so yeah, we're still in like early 2000s. That's not great. The only card I think that's ever saw any actual play was Iron Chain Dragon, and that wasn't because it was like a good card. It was the only card that was a level 6 synchro that fit a specific criteria at that time. So it was just like, yeah, I guess we're playing you because we have no other choice. In terms of the actual like strategy, reminds me of Red Eyes, not in the sense that the cards are any similar. I guess in a way there is Burn, but more of it doesn't know what it wants to be. It's a Burn strat, it's a mill strat, but there's also a lot of like attack point manipulation cards. I just don't think Iron Chain has enough cards to have a defined identity. It doesn't know what it wants to be, and I don't think it's ever been anything. It just sucks. Therefore, it needs help, but Konami is willing to let it just rot away. Actually, I guess once again, it's probably Rust. They are chains. Next on my list was Horus the Black Flame support. Now, yes, there was actually Horus support. However, it was not how I imagined it. The support is good though. It's actually seen some meta play, but it's not to do with the level up mechanic of the old cards. So like, I think again, if we're thinking back to the Armed Dragon segment, I would like to see the level up mechanic just kind of iterated on, to try and make it good. I know a lot of people say technically rank ups on the new level ups, but I think there's enough to define a difference there. And come on, you tell me you wouldn't inject the nostalgia into your veins if you got Horus the Black Flame retrains, because you would. It would be cool. But I won't grumble at the cards that we got. They're cool, like Egyptian-inspired cards. You got your King Sarcophagus, Walls of the Imperial Tomb. It's a solid strategy. They were like, yeah, there you go. There's a horse thing. It's like, you know, thanks for remembering that this existed, Konami. I'll take it. Here's another cool archetype with a fair bit of nostalgia. Nephthys. Was an old kind of boss monster. Then they went, hi, yeah, let's make it into a ritual archetype. Cool. And then they kind of gave it some links and then forgot about it. I'd like to see a bunch of new cards for the strategy. They didn't do that, which is sad. I think there's potential here. I think rituals as a mechanic, there's a lot of potential for them. I don't think they can ever be truly super duper busted broken just because of how they work, which is fine because it means you can do some cool things with them. I like to see that. Sadly, it was not meant to be. This next point was a very generic one. I just put Spirit Monster Rework Archetype. The idea being that we've seen Drytron, we've seen Sartic. Those were kind of spins on their mechanics being ritual and synchro. And I don't know how they do it, but I'd like to see the same done for spirits in some way. The current spirit monsters you see are all just kind of used for either jank or cheese strategies. You know, Imano, Iwato, generally like the Shinobirds, they just kind of randomly come out at some points. Yadagarasu is a very kind of classic jank card. I'm sure there's a few more that I've forgotten off the top of my head, but I just like the idea of can Konami come to these sort of old mechanics and make them work in some way. Doesn't have to be meta, just has to be playable, a casual playable thing. Could I take a cool spirit monster deck and make it work? Not at the moment, but I'd like to see if Konami could do that. Sadly, they didn't really release that thing. Kind of following on from the previous point is a Gemini monster rework archetype. Currently, the only Gemini cards that are kind of worth anything are the Chem Critters, and they suck. Imagine if they just printed some wild Gemini cards. That would be really funny. Again, I'm not sure how you'd save this mechanic. I just know that I'd like to see an attempt at it. Maybe give Chem Critters some new cards that could do that. I don't know. Chem Critters kind of just got abandoned. They were like, oh well. Well, that didn't happen. Very sad. One thing that gives me hope for spirit monsters, though, is Shinobirds. Surprisingly, got a couple of cards thrown their way in Age of Overlord, which was completely random. I guess if spirits aren't going to see it like a reworked mechanic or some way to make them cool, I guess give Shinobirds some support. So, yeah, guess I'll take it, Konami. Guess I'll take it. Alright, so here we are again with another cool idea. I had a pitch for you, as it were, for an archetype that is, yes, once again, nostalgia based, but also makes you go, why isn't this an archetype? There is money on the table right here, Konami. Easy money. It would be very cool. Baby Dragon archetype. Think about it. We've got Baby Dragon. We've got 100 Dragon. We've got 1000 Dragon. The archetype would consist of fusion monsters as it would get older, or perhaps you make it into an Xyz archetype, where you just make him older in the simulation as you pile on the new cards to simulate that the dragon is getting older. That would be really cool. Why isn't it a thing? You kind of... It's already a thing. You could make new cards, make a new archetype. What would be really cool is you would also make it support for, of course, Time Wizard and Dark Sage. who doesn't want that? Those are two cool cards as well. Well, it's just sad that there's that money on the table. I see the potential for an Xyz baby dragon archetype with Time Wizard and Dark Sage support. But hey, Konami, feel free to hit me up, send money my way when you do it. Thank you. The next point, I've actually got a very good case for why there needs to be more cards for this. It would be I guess it's known as the chemical archetype, or what I've just labeled here as the bonding H2O archetype. You know, the one that Bastion from GX uses? Why it hasn't seen any more support since like 2017, I don't know. Because there is cards to be made. I'm now going to maybe unlock a memory, maybe just give you some cursed knowledge. If you were to go back and watch the GX opening, you would see, of course, Bastion in his little segment. Like, oh look, here he is, here's the character, here's his cards he used. In that particular bit of animation, you'll see his iconic water dragon that, of course, the bonding H2O card makes. However, to his left is a fire dragon. This fire dragon has never existed. It has never been a card. But in the anime, it's just like, look, he has a fire dragon. Where is it? Just make the card. Just make the next set of cards, make fire dragon. And then while you're at it, fire dragon cluster, because we got water dragon cluster. Very simple. You're not running out of elements on the periodic table anytime soon, Konami, so, chop chop, get to it. Thank you. Here's another one I'm surprised they haven't made an archetype out of, and that's, I guess, the Australia archetype, or the Des archetype. Perhaps you would say it's the Ayers Rock Sunrise archetype. Basically, your big koalas, Master of Oz. Chumley, your bloody Chumley archetype. Where is Chumley? Alright. So, yeah, you could really make a whole thing out of just like Des, insert Australian animal here. It would be really easy. Probably make a few spell cards that are just popular Australian locations. I could see it working. People have played that, nice good old beast archetype. Maybe just summon out your Wasted Turbo out Master of Oz. I know in the anime there was a card called Koala March. That's probably not good anymore, so you could probably print that and be fine. Why not? Make it cool. Do it. Konami dangled hope in front of us all when they decided to release, back in Power of the Elements in 2022, a Moki Moki support card. Moki Moki Adrift. And then proceeded to not do anything since. That is the only Moki Moki support we have received in years. Why would Konami do this to us? Why is Moki Moki not a fully realized archetype in 2024? This needs to happen. It could happen. They just need more consistent ways to do anything. And win via big beatdown. That's all it needs to be. That's all it needs to be, Konami. Just let me Moki Moki beat down some fools. It would be really funny. Next, I come to you with one of my my wild pitches here. It's listed as the Hozan Ryu Luster Dragon Gem Dragon archetype. I don't know why Konami hasn't done this yet, because Hozan Ryu Luster Dragon 1 and 2 are just classic cards. I loved using them back in the day. That was my thing. I just played Dragon, I guess, as a deck. Throwing UFO Turtle, having a good time. I don't know why I did it, but that's what I did. Didn't think about it for a moment. Kind of already was a thing in the anime. Here's this screenshot, I guess, of Chaz going against like the Gem Dragons. There's King Dragon in there as well. Hozan Ryu, fun fact, translates to Diamond Dragon. It is literally a Diamond Dragon. I believe its description says as such. Luster Dragons are Sapphire and Emerald, respectively. Now, weirdly, in the anime, there was just a red luster dragon called Ruby Dragon. Cool, that exists. There's also Diamond Head Dragon. That was a thing. I'm not sure how you'd make this strategy uniform, but it's quite clearly just wing. There's potential there for a cool, like, diamond-based dragon archetype. I don't know if you do something similar to Adamancipators, make them like a synchro archetype and have an excavation mechanic. I don't know. I think they need a bit more thematics first before you completely define that. But, you know, that's on Konami to decide. But I hope they it crosses their mind. Number 36 is something that I think a lot of people are like, wow, it actually happened, including Pain96. I'm talking about volcanic support here. It actually happened. Nice. That's pretty epic, isn't it? You know what? Good time for it as well, considering we are in the midst of a pyro and fire meta. Yeah, the deck actually does something now, instead of trying to burn you and then just losing when your opponent inevitably does something on one of the blaze accelerators. Good time. Good luck getting a bonfire, though. Well, this point is an interesting one, because if you remember right at the beginning of this video, I was talking about Chamber Dragon Maid's Dragon Form. Now, that was something I really want in this game. Hasn't happened yet. There was another thing when I got back into the game at the end of TOS format that I really wanted, and was very disappointed to find out was not playable in any way. And also, even if I wanted to, I couldn't build it because it was extremely expensive. And that was Yubel. Those are the two things. I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Going, right, I want to build Dragon Maids. And then I was like, I want to build Yubel. Dragon Maids took me quite some time because I was very new to the concept of, like, when you shouldn't buy cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Finding out what short printing was, all that jazz. Very much my, like, adult introduction to that side of Yu-Gi-Oh! But hey, eventually we got there, I understood how reprints worked, etc., etc. The same could not really be said for Yubel, and I have been sat here praying ever since that Konami just remembers Yubel, and it's weird to me to think that it took them this long, because, well, hey, it's one of the major antagonists of, like, all of Yu-Gi-Oh, you know? Especially in GX. You know what? I think it was worth a wait, because what we've got is, I would say, perfect. They've nailed, like, mechanically. They've nailed it thematically as well. If you look at a lot of the cards, you will notice there is a lot of references to the anime in the background. So, like, Spirit of Yubel, you will notice kind of in the bottom left corner, I believe, there is this, like, building. That building is where Yubel and, like, the kingdom used to be before she got turned into what she is now. You've got Eternal Favorite. That was the moment in the anime when Yubel got super polyed into Jaden. And there's plenty of more stuff you look for, especially like Samsara D Lotus is actually a double reference. One, of course, it's a retrain of Samsara Lotus, which was a card Yubel played in her duels. But also the D part is a reference to Regenerating Rose, because in Japanese, it has that in its name in the OCG card. So that's pretty cool, because I liked playing Regenerating Rose back in the day. I was not good at the game. I just really liked the card. I thought it looked cool, and I liked the idea of tokens. Not to mention searchable Super Poly. I mean, that's just the icing on the cake, isn't it? The cherry on top. It had to be. If Super Poly was not a fundamental core strategy for Yubel, it wasn't like a fusion archetype, like what would Konami think, but they did do it, and I've got no complaints. Right now, still waiting on Nightmare Throne and Infernal Grave Squirmer which, honestly, I think Nightmare Throne is an insane field spell, and I can't wait to use it. So, you know what? 10 out of 10 Konami, thank you for doing this. If there's anything on this list that you've done, this is the thing I have been happy about the most, and probably the thing I would say is the second most wanted thing off this list. Chamber Dragon Maid's Dragon Form is at the top as like a on premise for me. But second to this, absolutely all of this Yubel stuff. It's been great. I'm gonna have fun playing it. Thanks, Konami. Anyway, back to more disappointment from Konami. Jinzo support. We didn't get any of that. Where's that, Konami? Let's be honest. Jinzo's a cool archetype. Classic Diamira monster. It's, I think, one of the main problems with this strategy is it's like an anti-trap strategy. So, when you've got something that counters something, if that thing isn't there in the game, then your strategy tends to just fail because, well, the thing you're relying on to happen doesn't happen, therefore you don't do anything. And I think that's what is kind of a main flaw of the Jinzo archetype, because, as we know, traps are not that common place in Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like Labyrinth is quite the exception to this, because it's such a strongly supported thing. Easy ways to like search out traps, good in its own right. But as it stands, with the speed of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Being so fast, spell cards, monster effects are the way to go. So you won't see trap cards unless they have some way to be played very quickly. A great example of this is Infinite Impermanence. Can be played on your opponent's turn 1 from the hand, as if you don't have any cards on field, you can just play it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, though, for bloody Esperoba's deck. I always liked that Fiend Mega Cyber was a part of the deck, as well as like Psychic Bounder. There was just a couple of cool random cards that got shoved in here. Yeah, speaking of Esperoba, there was a couple of random cards, like Law of the Cosmos, Cosmos Channel. They didn't seem to really do anything for the deck. So, yeah, I'd like it if Konami came in and did a proper, like, here's a good 5 or 6 cards, you know, boom, modernize the strategy, here you go. And make it so it can work regardless of whether trap cards are present or not, but it just has benefits and become even stronger if there is. Hello, it's me, back talking about the level up mechanic again. Number 39 was Silent Support. Silent Support has actually happened, however, it did not happen in the way I thought it would happen. Currently, Silent Support has come in the form of this kind of Yugimoto, his duel against the Pharaoh, last duel kind of deck, where it involves, like, Gandora, the gadgets, and so on, to reflect him in his, like, final stage, rather than it just being, like, silent as an archetype, which is interesting. And I do think these cards that have come out are great. However, it's kind of similar to, like, Horus, where they went, yeah, we're just done with the level mechanic, let's just make a completely different strategy. And what they have done is made decks that work, but have completely abandoned what they were. Again, I'd like to see them do something with the level up mechanic. But what we've got here is good, so I won't complain outside of what I've already complained about. My fellow Gooners, I come to ask you one question. Where is the Cyber Angel support? Why has Alexis Rhodes' strategy been kind of left to rot? The only card that's playable out of this is Ben 10, and that sees play in every single deck but Cyber Angel. I mean, there was a time where I'm pretty sure Ben 10 was either banned or limited, and that was all Drytron's fault, but hey, what isn't Drytron's fault? Please bring back Union Carrier, I miss you. Yeah, I think they just need a bunch of cards, just big old wave. You know, when Konami does like a, here's this set, and we just released like 8 cards for the strategy, 1 cards, it's all playable, have a good time. They just need to do that because it's a GX archetype, a lot of old cards. They have received a couple of cards every now and again, but it's been a very long time, and it's not a real strategy at this point. So yeah, please do that, Konami. Thank you to Macedal's solo mode for reminding me about this cool archetype, which is the Demise and Ruin ritual archetype. Again, let's give some love to all these old ritual cards, because I don't see why not. The art is so awesome, and the lore is so awesome for Demise and Ruin. They're just cool cards. You have big dude and sexy woman. It's like you've just put everything in there. Just made it cool. Thank you. But the card's very old and they haven't seen support in a very long time. Just give them some modern cards. I think some of these monsters actually still hold up to a certain extent. They just haven't had anything new. I think if you just give them some new cards, it'd be fine. We'd all have a grand old time. If Hungry Burger can get an archetype, why not Performance of Sword? Next strategy is one that is in dire need of some support to make it just, well, 1, modernized, 2, faster, and here I am. It's not talking about the level up mechanic, don't you worry, I'm talking about reptiles again, because I sure love me some reptiles. And that would be Venom support. Why hasn't Venom received any support? I'm not quite sure. I think it's a well-beloved archetype. But I can tell you what's wrong with it. It generally just comes down to the cards are too old and the strategy is too slow. A lot of people will look at Venominaga, the deity of poisonous snakes, and they'll think to themselves, bro, it says literally win the game on it. It's got an alternate win condition. It must be really good. 3 hyper counters. Except when you read it, it's when you inflict battle damage to your opponent with her, put a hyper counter on, and you get to 3, you instant win. Okay. However, name a name a time Yu-Gi-Oh goes on that long. 3 turns is considered long these days. You're having a crazy long game if you've gone for 3 turns. Especially if you are going first. You don't even get a battle phase on the first turn, so that's like you've missed a turn. So good luck with that one, right? That and placing venom counters, augmenting attacks. I feel like there's a lot of ways to kind of get around that, not really care. The protection effects on Venominaga are very nice. It's just the way you're trying to win with the hyper venom counters, just too slow. But if Konami gave a way to speed up that process in some way, maybe not speed up an instant win effect, because you could see how that would easily become very bad, but perhaps a way to ensure that your snakes survive long enough, or you've got a menacing enough end board to achieve that strategy. That would be very nice of you to do that, Konami. And I guess my final point here is I don't soup this into the reptile good stuff because it's too slow. You look at Ogdoudix, they're on the opposite scale. There's like a reptile scale. We've got Venoms being incredibly slow, and we've got Ogdoudix being literally like turbo yourself into the graveyard. They don't mesh because it's like I'd rather just make Cosmic Slicer an A counter lock the opponent rather than just commit to any sort of Venom play and die, Sad, but that's what it is. Although I would love to see them get support. This next one is it's a very interesting one thematically. I really like it because, well, I'm a fan of eldritch horror stuff. And that'd be the Tindangles, which, if you didn't know, is a combination of Tindalos and, well, angles. It's all themed around the fact that in your Cthulhu mythos stuff, Hounds of Tindalos come from corners. And, well, what are corners? They're often mathematical angles, so you mesh the two together thematically. It's like, oh yeah, of course it makes sense. Angles. It's all about angles. But yeah, apart from that, their actual strategy sucks. I think solely because it's a flip monster archetype. I think they should do something similar to what they did with the crawlers, where they just gave it some like decent cards, and you know, crawlers aren't in like the worst spot ever, to be honest. But I think Tin Dangles could do with a bunch of cards. But I think the fact that there's a lot of flip monsters to them holds them back. I think Acute Cerberus seems like a pretty decent card, all things considered. But yeah, Tin Dangles, they need help. This is one of those archetypes you feel like shouldn't this have been modernized in some way, since it's, well, one of Konami's old games. It's the BES archetype. From their game, there was like 3 games. I know one of them's like Gladius or something like that. Gradius. It's one of those 2 words. Yeah, and it's just a very like old strategy. It's just a reference to old Konami game. You'd think they'd do something with it, considering it's like their thing, but no, it's kind of been left to rot in a way. Just about. Sometimes you see people bring it out for funny, like, wow, look at this funny combo I can do with this strategy. But other than that, it's never seen. Here is another fact for you. It took Cloudians 11 years to get 1 support card. The archetype is unplayable. It needs help. Give them help, Konami. They just need new cards. All of them. Just redo it. make fog counters and all that stuff playable. Make this as a playable control archetype. They don't do anything. Send them help. This next deck isn't as bad as Cloudians, but certainly I think needs a few more cards just to bump up a strategy into kind of modern play a bit better. And that would be Gusto's. The only card I ever really see is Daigusto Emerald, and he's just like one of those like kind of generic extra deck monsters that you see every now and again in certain strategies. But yeah, the last support was in 2021. Hasn't seen any meaningful meta play. I imagine the cards they did get made the deck feel a lot better to play, but they just need a little bit more, don't they? I think, to just make them better, just make them a bit more like there's a threat and a presence to them. Here is another reptile strategy for you, and that being aliens. Now, as I've mentioned a few times in this video, aliens are best used in just reptile good stuff, and those really the only 2 that see a good amount of play are M-Frame and Cosmic Slicer when you do the Planet Pollutant Virus A counter lock on your foes, which it actually can be decently strong because it's just like, nah, stop playing for a good 3 turns. Hopefully you can do something by then with the rest of the reptile cards. Sometimes not. As for like pure alien though, they got a lot of old cards. They need more than just a couple of links to really make that deck something again. But for now, the couple of reptile aliens can find their home in my reptile extra deck. Worms are a thing. What do? I don't know. I've never seen them played. I just know they're cards that exists. And if I've never seen them, that probably means they need help. So, you know, if we can get some worm support out here, that'd be pretty cool. They're reptile cards, and if this video has established one thing, is that I am a reptile enthusiast, and if I'm not touching it, that means it's not good. Hands up if you knew Summon Skull had an archetype. You'd be surprised. He does. You're thinking, oh, is it like the summoned archetype? No, it's the Archfiend archetype. Quite some time ago, Konami was like, no, actually, Summon Skull is an Archfiend, and while being a normal monster, a type of card that is renowned for not having any effects, they wrote on it, this counts as an Archfiend. So he's a normal monster with an effect. Because Konami just says it is. It just works. Don't question it. Yeah. I've never seen Archfiend played. They've got some weird cards, like they have Archfiend Eccentric, which is just like a pendulum monster. They've got a chess theme going on as well, with all your different chess pieces. I think there's a lot of potential here, but Konami needs to just sit down and have a serious talk with themselves of what they actually want to do with this archetype, instead of just going, oh man, I think if we just slap a pendulum monster in there, that'll solve the archetype, guys, right? Right, guys? Yeah, that'll do. They can have that, and then forget about the archetype for several years. So anyway, Warrock Skylar is still a babe. Warrock were just dead on arrival. Let's be real. They got one piece of support card, and Konami just abandoned it. They're like, yeah, look at this TCG exclusive world premiere Warrock. To the silence of the crowd. This deck needs a lot of help. It's another one of them battle phase archetypes that if you just... and they never are strong if you have to like rely on the battle phase. Again, if a lot of your strategy can rely on the battle phase, you can't do it on turn 1. That's the thing, and as we all know, turn 1 is very strong. And you better have a good reason to go turn 2, looking at like Cyber Dragon's a great idea. This Predaplant, Galaxy Eyes, Blue Eyes, basically any the Blue Eyes equivalent of every bloody anime, where it's like, oh, my big dragon hurt you. But yeah, Warrock really isn't that, and they just need to be finished as an archetype instead of just kind of being left to rot. Like, why? Why did you do this, Konami? Boojins are in fact a archetype of all time. That's just another deck I've never seen. Last card they got was in Dual Overload. I like that sometimes they look like dudes from the anime. That's pretty cool. Look at this Pegasus guy. He's funny. Other than that, they probably just need new cards. No idea what's wrong with them, but you don't see them, so there's got to be something. Did you know the last Gradle card released was in 2016? They aren't modern anymore. There's like not that many cards at all. Gradle Dragon seems pretty cool. I think there's like a little bit of cheese in this archetype. Do a bit of janky stuff, but in reality, nobody's playing pure Gradles, are they? Just give Gradle some more stuff. They got some cool artwork. I like the little dudes on them. But yeah, not very good, is it? Give Gradle some love. As I've tried to keep track of when archetypes last had support, I believe the last time Gen X saw a card was around 2011, I think. But it's finally here. The support's finally here. It actually happened. Mark that one off the wish list. I think this support looks promising. You look at that synchro card they've got. That looks scary, and they've got a link card as well. A couple of monster cards. I think this is looking good for Gen X players, so I'm happy for you. Very, very cool. Very cool, Konami. Alright, we're beginning to near the end here. And I'm back to pitching you some wacky stuff that would be really cool. We all know 5Ds. We all have car games on motorcycles. And to that I say, why isn't Speed World, and I guess by that extension Speed World 2, actually cards in the game as just generic field spells? I think it'd be really cool if the Speed World field spells, they had similar to effects to the anime, but also it kind of worked like Chicken Game. You know how like Chicken Game you each take it in turns to use the field spell? Yeah, something similar to that, where maybe if one person plays it, it auto-fetches the other one out of the opponent's deck, or some other crazy stuff. But I think each person should be able to add like counters to it in some way. You take off the counters, draw a card, those sort of like effects. for Speed World. I think it'd just be really cool. Even if it wasn't good, I feel like these should be in the game to some extent. Here's another one I feel like has got to happen at some point, and that is Seals 2 and 3 of Orichalcos. Is it Duta and Tritos? I don't feel like I pronounced that correctly at all. But in the anime, Darts, had a whole strategy surrounding the Seals of Orichalcos. And, I think it could make a very interesting alternate win condition if the whole point of the deck was to keep layering up your seals. Make it like either you can just, in your next standby phase, destroy this Seal of Orichalcos, play the next one directly from your deck, and then just it keeps going until maybe you hit so many seals and it's like it stacks all the previous effects, but then maybe it's like if you make it to your end phase with this one, win the game, something cool like that. I think you could rework a bunch of cards like Divine Serpent Geh, make him a specific monster in this archetype, and just have it around being like this kind of Seal of Orichalcos archetype. I don't know why Konami haven't done it. This feels like free money, free nostalgia money, you know what I'm saying? And I think it could be cool, just more weird, interesting alternate win decks. Why not? Do it. Here I am with an extremely specific thing I needed in my life. I'll just read it as I wrote it down. Dark Guardian plus Dark Element cards added / TCGified to be relevant Gate Guardian support. Now, I have been loving the Gate Guardian support. I was waiting for ages to play it. I very much called how the archetype should work. I kept saying to my friends, look, it's just gotta work like ABC, just make it a contact fusion archetype made out of the little dudes, and you could have there'd be 2 pieces and then the 3 pieces, you just make a new, cooler Gate Guardian, very cool, and then you put in Dark Guardian and Dark Element from the GX duel. So when the initial wave came out, and I was like, where's Dark Guardian and Dark Element? And I was like, they'll just release it later for me, Konami. Just give me it, make it an excellent backup strategy. Or if you've managed to get a really good hand, kind of just pop off. You could have Dark Guardian off with the Dark Element. It just makes the perfect backup strategy for if your Gate Guardian monsters die. I've seen great success with it, honestly. I'm very happy they did it. Thank you, Konami. As I've put down here, now they have, and everything is right with the world. If you couldn't tell I was pleased about this, that should tell you. Alright, we're going with a bit of a reach here for something, but I don't know if everybody would know what this is, but it's the release of the Hydra Drive archetype. This is just an anime-only archetype at the moment. It was used, I think, by a villain in Vrains, and yeah, this archetype's kind of trapped in anime hell. It has a cool artwork. I like it, just looking at them. Cool, cybersy looking monsters. But it's also, its idea around this deck is it was a anti-attribute Link archetype that, depending if those attributes are on the field, you could do direct attacks, and I think that's really cool. I don't think it counted every attribute. I think it didn't count, nothing counts as divine, let's be real. But also light and dark, I think it was the main kind of all those other ones. I think, why not release it? It's just free archetype left on the table. You've done half the work already, Konami. Just make cards? I don't know. You tend to do that, Konami. You can do that. I don't know if you know. You make cards for the card game. Do it. Congratulations, folks. We've done this together. We've made it to the end of the video with the final thing I had. Point 59 reads, Vehicroid, complete redo. Vehicroid. We all know it sucks. It might be the worst archetype in the game, if not a contender for it. What is there to say about Vehicroid that hasn't been said before? Their fusion spell doesn't work to fuse most of their monsters from their extra deck, of course. Dragonroid can't be searched out by effects of like other Vehicroid cards because it's a wind monster. Now, the reason that's a problem is because there's an archetype called Speedroids. So to differentiate them, to stop Vehicroid cards searching out Speedroid cards, they put restriction on a lot of the cards saying non-Windroid monsters. And so, because Konami said, "Wow, if we're gonna make Dragonroid from the manga, let's make it the same. So we'll give it the Wind attribute," forgetting that like all the other cards in the archetype that this card is supposed to help is itself a wind monster and therefore cannot help the cards, and you just have to hard draw the card because you can't search it out. Konami, turn on your damn brains, okay? Just overhaul this archetype, release just new Vehicroids. It'll just call them Vehicroids instead of just Roids for a start, right? That would solve a lot of problems. If you have Speedroids and Vehicroids, then you don't have the problem of just the Roid word. Solved. I've done it for you. Just do that, Konami. And, yeah. With that, I guess all that's left to do is thank you for watching if you've made it this far. If you're still wondering, yes, the Guilty Gear video is still on its way. It's taken longer than I thought due to just getting equipment for it and how I want to do it. And I guess in a way, the longer I wait, the more songs release, so it inadvertently creates more work for me, but I don't think that's a bad thing because perhaps once the final Season 3 character is out, it's actually a great time to release the video, and I can come back and do another video on the Season 4 characters and then kind of update what I thought on everything, which I think would be very nice. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to do all the YouTube pleasantries, and hopefully I'll see you next time.